The movie opens at the Wonder Wharf at night. A conflict is seen in shadows most of the carnival toys, and moments later, a gunshot is fired, and a body may be heard dropping. 6 years later inside the current, we come to the Bob's Burgers eating place, wherein the Belcher circle of relatives is getting prepared for the day. Bob H. John Benjamin and his wife Linda John Roberts are on the point of see a mortgage officer from the financial institution. Kids Tina, Dan Mintz, Jean, Eugene Merman, and Louise Kristen Schall are getting equipped for their very last week of classes before summertime holiday, for which they all have massive plans. Sunny side up summer. Bob simply needs commercial enterprise to run well for the summer, specifically since the wharf is celebrating an anniversary. Tina desires her longtime way down Jimmy Jr., also H. John Benjamin, to be her summertime boyfriend. Jean is looking ahead to a show he is ready to carry out in. At the same time as Louise wants to now not be visible as a toddler, mainly on account that her classmate Chloe Barbash, Stephanie Beatrice, made fun of the purple bunny ears Louise continually wears for the reason that Louise would now not do a school stunt that might motivate her to lose the ears. Tina has a fable approximately driving horses with Jimmy Jr. and getting him to trip together with his pants off, and he or she concerns that the truth of being with Jimmy Jr. might now not suit her delusion. Jean wants his buddies a known family accrued for a musical overall performance from his institution, the Itty Bitty Ditty Committee. Bob and Linda arrive at the financial institution, but the loan officer without delay rejects their mortgage utility, in addition to the burger that Bob prepared for him. He tells Bob that they have got 1 week to get cash for their business to live afloat. Bob is left burdened out over the state of affairs, and even though the own family attempts to cheer him up, matters take a flip for the more severe once they pay attention a noise from outdoor and see a sinkhole open up in front of the restaurant, which prevents everyone from getting into the vicinity. The Belchers' landlord, Calvin Fisherder Kevin Klein, shows up to the scene with his brother Felix Zach Galifianakis and their cousin legal professional Grover David Wayne, and Calvin has the same opinion to allow the Belchers with hold on hire for now until Enterprise receives hire. After greater than an afternoon, Bob is dismayed that the restaurant is dropping Enterprise. Meanwhile, Louise sees an possibility to shed the toddler photo and has Tina and Jean help her report a video in which she tries mountaineering down the sinkhole. She finally ends up slipping, and whilst she tries to get herself out, she reveals a skeleton inside and has some of its tooth fall in her mouth. The skeleton is taken out and is later diagnosed as a carny named Cotton Candy Dan, the man killed inside the opening scene. The Belchers assume that the body being observed will remedy some of their problems, but it best makes things worse because Calvin is below arrest on suspicion of him being Dan's assassin. Louise also takes one of the enamel to school, even though it's evidence, to show it off to the other children. However, Chloe nevertheless mocks her and says she is her infant, which makes her mad. The Belchers' pal Teddy, Larry Murphy, builds Bob a cart so that he and Linda can promote burgers on the road. Linda makes herself a horny burger costume to help Bob. Since they don't have a license to promote, they ought to do it in secret whilst looking to attract commercial enterprise. Bob, Linda, and Teddy all ought to cover while Bob's fitness inspector nemesis Hugo, Sam Sader, and his accomplice Ron Lynch come across the wharf. Louise convinces Tina and Jean to bypass school, which will find proof that Calvin is actually harmless of homicide. They stumble upon a mystery carny society, Carnitopia, to try to find solutions. The youngsters talk to their friend, petty criminal Mickey John Q. Cuban, and that they ask round. The carnies get shielding whilst Louise insinuates that certainly one of them could have killed Cotton Candy Dan, Lucky Ducks, and that they deliver the kids no statistics. As the trio leave, a larger carny follows them and says that the last time Dan turned invisible, he became with Felix, main the children to suppose he might be the actual assassin. The children go to Felix's extravagant treehouse and hide while he gets there. They overhear him talking to his ex-spouse about getting returned collectively together with her and making plans to depart the United States of America. The three then comply with him as he makes his way towards the wharf. Bob, Linda, and Teddy continue to try to do enterprise, but they smash things after they by chance run over a shrine devoted to Cotton Candy Dan. After outrunning irritated carnies, Bob expresses his issues to Linda, approximately being capable of hold the commercial enterprise walking. However, Linda attempts to hold his spirits up. They then spot the youngsters' bikes and move seeking out them. The youngsters comply with Felix toward the Mole Hill trip at the wharf. Jean presses a button that sends him and his sisters down a slide which holds a secret hideout for the Fisherders. Calvin and Felix reach there, because the former become released due to a lack of evidence towards him. Just because the kids try to inform him that Felix is a traitorous killer, Grover suggests up to settle the brothers' affairs. Louise then notices a picture of the Fisherders and sees Grover in it with a cufflink just like the only they located in Felix's treehouse. On Grover's wrist is likewise a chew mark matching the tooth of the skeleton. Louise realizes Grover is the killer. After he's located out, he holds all people up with a crossbow, just as Bob and Linda turn out to be falling down. Grover explains himself not that evil, pronouncing that he at the start deliberate to construct a mega park over the Wonder Wharf 6 years in advance and had killed Dan in a scuffle. He tried to do away with Dan's body on the wharf within the hopes that it might get close down so his plan could pass into effect. However, the production employee within the location scooped up the dirt with Dan's frame and dumped it within the hollow in the front of Bob's restaurant. Grover tries to lure Calvin and Felix in a submarine while putting fireplace to the wharf in an attempt to blame them for it. The Belchers escape and find a small pass-cart car to attempt to flee, however Grover catches them and makes use of a bulldozer to push them right into a hollow and start to bury them alive. The Belchers bemoan their situation, and Louise blames herself for everything, pronouncing that none of this would have happened if she wasn't obsessed with looking to be seen as courageous and mature without her hat. Bob and Linda then tell Louise to no longer be disenchanted about it and explain the starting place of her bunny ears. It became inspired by using Bob's past due mom's personal knitted hat, and Linda made them for Louise after her first day of faculty. Just as Linda fears that is the cease for them, Bob reaches deep within himself and hits the pedal at the pass cart, causing a pipe to break that sends them lower back to the surface, where they find Teddy watching for them. The Belchers record the entirety to the cops. He goes to try to unfasten Calvin and Felix, but his family and Teddy observe him. Bob and Louise manipulate to forestall the lit fuse that could engulf the wharf, and they manipulate to locate Calvin and Felix to unfasten them. Sergeant Bosco, Gary Cole, and his squad discover Grover and arrest him. Later on, the sinkhole is crammed up, and Enterprise is capable of return to ordinary for Bob's Burgers. Calvin rewards them for his or her assist with their unmarried month's well worth of hire. Tina admits her emotions to Jimmy Jr. and kisses him. Louise does the college stunt and drops her hat, which she is okay with, though we nonetheless never see her without her ears. Gene goes on along with his overall performance, but it has a small turnout. The Belchers then reopen their restaurant together as a family. After the credit, some other fantasy of Tina's is proven, in which she is driving horses with Jimmy Jr. and a few zombies. The Belcher family, Bob, Linda, Tina, Gene, and Louise, are becoming prepared for the summer season, but their plans take a setback while Bob reveals himself unable to come up with money to maintain their restaurant afloat. Making things worse is a large sinkhole opening up in the front of the eating place, inflicting the family to lose commercial enterprise. When Louise tries a stunt to make the other youngsters at college see she isn't a toddler, the kids turn out to be finding a skeleton belonging to a carny known as Cotton Candy Dan. The Belchers' landlord, Calvin Fisherder, is accused of murder and is arrested. The youngsters burst off on their very own to attempt to discover the fact about the murder, believing Calvin's brother Felix is probably the actual offender. Meanwhile, Bob and Linda's tries to drum up Enterprise have disastrous effects. The children discover the Fisherders' hiding vicinity and find out that their cousin, Attorney Grover, is the actual killer, as he had killed Dan and left his frame to try to have the Wonder Wharf, the entertainment park wherein the characters hang out, close down so he can build his own mega park. However, the frame become dumped in the hollow in the front of Bob's Burgers. Grover attempts to burn down the wharf and blame the Fisherders, even as additionally subsequently seeking to bury the Belchers alive so that they don't prevent his plans. Although the family unearths themselves in hazard, they band together and locate the muse to get themselves out. The Belchers store the wharf and the Fisherders, and Grover is arrested. The sinkhole is fixed, and Bob is able to repay the financial institution and preserve his commercial enterprise. Louise additionally receives over her own lack of confidence, whilst Tina gets Jimmy Jr. to be her summer season boyfriend, and Gene performs his musical overall performance.